I was once called the morning star, the brightest light in heaven, revered above all. Now I am known only as Lucifer, a name whispered in fear. Let me tell you my story. In the beginning, before time existed and before the world was made, there was only God, eternal and infinite. And just like that, with his single word, heaven was born, a place of beauty and peace. Rivers of living water flowed across its golden lands, their clear streams shining like glass. The light in heaven did not come from a sun or stars, it came directly from God, filling everything with his glory. And it was here that I was brought into life. I was not like the others. Among the countless hosts of angels, God made me the brightest. He called me Lucifer, the light-bearer and the morning star. I was the first among the heavenly hosts, the crowning jewel of his creation. He adorned me with a beauty and brilliance that surpassed all others. My form reflected his perfection. My face shone like the dawn, and my voice was like a symphony of celestial harps. No angel could rival me in wisdom, in power, or in grace. And so God gave me a purpose that matched my splendor. I was the conductor of heaven's worship and the leader of the celestial choirs. I loved the role he entrusted to me, and I poured all of myself into fulfilling it with utmost devotion. Through my dedication I sought to honor him, to reflect the gratitude I felt for being made so magnificent, so unique. Every act I performed was my way of offering back to him who had made me what I was. In those early days, I never desired more. I lived in harmony with the other angels. There were countless angels, a host too numerous to count. And yet, despite our differences, we were all bound by the same love. We moved as one, fulfilling our purpose in the grand design of the Almighty. There was no thought of self in my heart, no pride, no ambition. The songs we sang were pure and sincere, rising from the depths of our being. Each song was a tribute to the one who had created us out of nothing. But over time something began to change. Even in the perfection of heaven, I could feel the weight of what I had been given. At first, it was nothing more than a faint thought, but it grew. Little by little, I began to believe that I was greater than the one who created me. And I asked myself, why must all glory belong to him? I was the seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. My light surpassed that of every angel. My voice commanded the choirs of heaven itself. And yet I was made to bow, to serve, to reflect, never to shine for my own sake. The first time those thoughts entered my mind, I managed to push them away, brushing them off as nothing more than a fleeting moment of vanity. But they lingered, like a seed sown in fertile ground, slowly taking root within me. No matter how hard I tried to cast out the troubling thoughts, they always found their way back to me. More and more, I found myself wondering, why should I always stand beneath him? Why should my greatness remain hidden, buried in the shadow of his throne? The thought grew bolder, louder. What had started as a whisper in my heart grew into a roaring conviction, and I began to see heaven as a cage that held me back from revealing the fullness of my own greatness. I was destined for more. I thought I deserved more. In my mind, I began to see myself not as a servant of God, but as his equal, perhaps even his better. I believed I could rule better than the one who made me. The thought was thrilling. I imagined a throne for myself higher than his. I pictured all the hosts of heaven turning their adoration toward me. They would sing my praises, they would bow to me. The throne was my destiny, and I would stop at nothing to claim it. That is the curse of pride. It convinces you that the light you carry is your own, that you are greater than the one who gave it to you. Looking back now, I see it clearly. Pride is a slow poison. It begins sweet, almost imperceptible, but it spreads quickly, twisting everything it touches. It blinds you and distorts the truth. The beauty of heaven faded from my sight. All I could see was myself, and all I wanted was more. I was sure I'd climb to heaven and I'd set my throne over the stars of God. But what I didn't know at that moment was that my thoughts were the beginning of my fall. So my rebellion began with a plan. The whispers in my heart turned into action, and the action started with words. I knew that if I was to challenge the throne of God, I could not do it alone. Heaven was vast, and its hosts were countless. I would need allies, angels of power and authority, those who shared my discontent, or could be persuaded to see things as I did. I began with quiet conversations, subtle and careful. I approached those I knew were closest to me in power and influence, angels who held dominion over realms of heaven. At first, I asked simple questions, planting seeds of doubt. Have you ever wondered why we, who are so magnificent, are bound to serve? Why our light must always reflect His and never shine for itself? Their answers varied. Some dismissed the idea immediately, their loyalty to the Creator unshaken. But others hesitated. They listened. They considered. I saw the flicker of something in their eyes, a curiosity, a recognition of their own strength. Those were the ones I pursued. I spoke of freedom, painting a picture of a new heaven, one where we, the brightest and most powerful, would no longer bow to anyone. The more I spoke, the more they listened. I appealed to their pride, their sense of worth. I reminded them of their splendor, their wisdom, their unmatched power among creation. And so, they began to abandon their proper dwelling, the places they were given in heaven, to join me in this vision of what could be. Angels of high rank, powers, dominions, and thrones began to see themselves not as servants, but as rulers in waiting. I saw it in their eyes when we spoke, a fire kindling that matched my own. They began to question, to dream of a heaven where their light would no longer be eclipsed by His. As my following grew, my words became bolder. I spoke openly of a new order, a kingdom where we would sit upon thrones of our own making. And it wasn't long before the murmurs became action. The angels who had once sung in perfect harmony with the Creator's will now turned their voices toward me. Their allegiance shifted from the throne of God to the vision I offered. A third of heaven's hosts joined my cause, angels of great beauty, wisdom, and strength, their wings ready for battle, their hearts burning with ambition. In secret we prepared for what was to come. Our rebellion would not be a quiet act of dissent. It would be a war. I knew the cost, and so did they. But the promise of what we could achieve outweighed the risk. I organized them into ranks, assigning leaders to oversee the growing legions of angels who had aligned themselves with me. Together, we crafted a plan to challenge the very foundations of heaven. My betrayal was complete, and the stage was set for the greatest battle heaven would ever see. But the Creator was not silent. He spoke my name, His voice reverberating through the heavens, both patient and resolute. Lucifer, He said, turn back. There is no victory in this path, only destruction. His words struck like thunder, and for a moment, even the loyal angels seemed to pause. But I had made my choice. I raised my voice in defiance and declared that my will was my own. I would not bow, not to Him, not to anyone. Then came the command. From the throne God called His loyal angels to stand against us. At their head was Michael, the leader of heaven's armies, small in stature but mighty in faith. Michael and his angels fought against us, and me and my angels fought back. The battle erupted with a fury that shook the very foundations of heaven. Light and fire filled the skies as swords clashed and wings beat with thunderous force. My followers and I fought with all the strength we could muster. Every blow we struck was driven by the belief that we were fighting for freedom, for a kingdom where we would no longer serve but reign. Michael, however, fought with a power beyond understanding. His sword seemed to cut through our ranks with unyielding force. Despite our strength, the tide of battle began to turn against us. Then came the decisive blow. Heaven's light surged with an intensity I could not withstand. I was struck down, and with me the angels who had stood by my side. The fall was unlike anything I could have imagined. It was not a simple descent, but a complete severance from everything I had once known. The harmony of heaven, the radiance of God's presence, the unity I had shared with my brothers, all of it was ripped away. My wings, once radiant with light, faltered. My name, once a symbol of brilliance, was now a curse. Where we fell has been the subject of many tales. Some say, I descended upon Babylon, the great city of wealth and indulgence, seeking to establish my kingdom among its towers. Others claim I fell near Jerusalem, drawn to its holiness, hoping to corrupt what was sacred. But the truth is, I fell long before Babylon or Jerusalem ever existed. When the fall ended, I found myself in a realm far from the perfection of heaven. It was chaos, a shadowy reflection of what I had once known. There was no peace, no light, only the echoes of my defiance. My followers gathered around me, their faces marked with the same bitterness and loss that now defined me. We were no longer angels of light, but exiles, cast out into a place of desolation. I looked at them, those who had shared in my rebellion, and I vowed we would not remain defeated. I told them, if I could not claim the throne of heaven, I would build a kingdom here. And my humiliation only fueled my resolve. And so, I became what I am now. No longer Lucifer, the morning star, but Satan, the prince of darkness. My kingdom was born of rebellion. I thought I would finally be happy, that I would find fulfillment in ruling a realm of my own. But even as I looked upon my new domain, the bitterness lingered. I had sought equality, freedom, and a throne to call my own. Instead, I had lost everything, my place, my light, and the harmony I once cherished. Yet, despite it all, my anger burned brighter than ever. I would not surrender. The war was over, but my fight had only begun. In the silence of my exile, I watched from the shadows as God's creation continued to unfold. Though cast out, I was not completely severed from the divine realm. I could still see His works, His designs, and what I saw reignited my hatred, a new creation. God, in His infinite power, formed beings unlike anything I had ever seen. They were called Adam and Eve, the first of humanity. They were made of flesh, fragile and finite, yet gifted with something extraordinary, free will. And more than that, they were made in His image, a reflection of His divine nature. Where once I had been the most radiant of His creations, now these weak and mortal beings were given the place I had longed for. My hatred grew stronger. I watched as He breathed life into them as they opened their eyes and stood in the garden He had created for them. It was called Eden, a paradise filled with beauty and abundance. Rivers of life watered its lands, and every tree bore fruit for their nourishment. They lived in peace, walking freely with God in perfect harmony, untouched by pain, suffering, or death. And He loved them. I could feel His delight as He walked with them, spoke to them, and shared a closeness that I had once known. It was unbearable. These small, imperfect creatures had been chosen for the relationship I had been denied. I, who had stood at the very throne of heaven, who had walked among the fiery stones, was cast out while they were exalted. It was an insult I could not forgive. If I could not ascend to God's throne, I would destroy His creation instead. I watched them closely. These humans were so innocent and unaware of the dangers around them. They lived in harmony with their Creator, untouched by pain or suffering, knowing nothing of rebellion. But I saw their weakness. The free will God had given them, the gift meant to draw them closer to Him, could also be their undoing. In the middle of the garden, there was one tree from which they were forbidden to eat, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. It stood as a test of their obedience, a reminder that even in their freedom, they were subject to God's will. This single command was their only limitation. I knew that if I could lead them to disobey, I could sever the bond they shared with God. And so, I devised a plan. If I could corrupt them, turn them against Him, I could mar His perfect creation. I would take their free will and twist it, showing them that their choices could lead to ruin instead of life. They would know pain. They would know suffering. They would know death, just as I had. I was skilled at persuasion, and I knew how to make the forbidden seem irresistible. I would plant doubt in their minds, whisper promises of wisdom and power, and lead them to the one act they were told not to commit. And so I entered the garden, not as the radiant prince I once was, but as the tempter. I took the form of a serpent, approaching the woman with subtlety and purpose. She was near the tree God had commanded them not to eat from. I knew her obedience to Him rested on trust, and trust could be easily broken with the right words. I whispered to her, just as pride had once whispered to me. "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" I asked with a calm and persuasive voice. I needed her to question, to wonder if God's command was as clear and unyielding as she thought. She replied with innocence, but also hesitation. "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden," she replied, "but God did say, 'You must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it, or you will die.'" Her response revealed both her trust in God and her lack of full understanding of His command. It was enough for me to plant doubt. "You will not surely die," I said, twisting the truth into a lie that sounded like freedom. "God knows that when you eat from it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." It was a lie, but it carried just enough truth to draw her in. I had once longed to be like God, to rise above my place, and now I offered her the same choice. I watched her struggle, the gaze lingering on the fruit. Curiosity, desire, and doubt battled within her. The fruit looked beautiful, and the promise of wisdom was tempting. Then she reached out, took the fruit, and ate. At that moment, the first act of disobedience was done. She gave some to the man, and he ate too. The harmony of the garden shifted, as if creation itself recoiled at their choice. The innocence they had once known vanished, replaced by shame and a heavy awareness they had never felt before. They hid themselves, covering their nakedness, their shame obvious even to me. When God called out to them, His voice was filled with sorrow and justice. He already knew what they had done and who was behind it. But I felt no regret. I had succeeded. Humanity, the pinnacle of His creation, had fallen, just as I had. But I was not satisfied. Corrupting humanity was only the beginning. If I could not defeat God directly, I would wage my war through His creation. I would twist, deceive, and destroy, ensuring that the perfect world He had made would never be the same. The fall of man was only the first strike in my rebellion, a rebellion that would never end. My war against Him became eternal, fought not with swords but with whispers, choices, and the hearts of humanity. I became the voice of temptation, weaving my words into the minds of men and women. To Adam and Eve I had planted doubt. To their descendants I offered something far more destructive: pride, greed, hatred, despair. These became my weapons, sharper than any blade, capable of breaking even the strongest spirit. My purpose was clear: to corrupt, to divide, and to destroy the bond between God and his creation. Through the ages, I made myself a shadow over human history. I whispered to kings and rulers, feeding their ambition and turning nations against one another. Wars erupted, blood flowed, and the world became my battlefield. I led prophets astray, silenced some before they could speak, and twisted the words of others. Yet no matter how much chaos I created, I couldn't crush the resilience of his plans. No matter how deep the darkness I spread, there were always those who clung to their faith, their light shining in defiance of me. Then came Job, a man whose faith in God seemed unshakable. He was upright, devoted, and blessed with wealth, family, and good health. I saw an opportunity to prove that his loyalty to the Creator was shallow, built only on the comforts he had been given. So, I approached God with a challenge. "Does Job fear God for nothing?" I asked. "Have you not placed a hedge around him, his household, and everything he has? But stretch out your hand and strike all he owns, and he will surely curse you to your face." Permission was granted. I could take everything from Job, but I was forbidden to harm him physically. So, I struck. In a single day, disaster after disaster fell upon him. Raiders stole his oxen and donkeys. Fire from the sky consumed his sheep. The Chaldeans captured his camels. A great wind collapsed the house where his children were gathered, killing them all. One after another messengers came with the news. And yet Job did not curse God. Instead, he fell to the ground in worship and said, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." But I was not finished. I returned to God and said, "Stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you to your face." Again, God allowed it, but forbade me from taking Job's life. So, I struck him with painful sores from head to toe. Job, in agony, sat in ashes, scraping his skin with broken pottery. Even his wife urged him, "Curse God and die." But Job replied, "Shall we accept good from God, and not trouble?" Through all this, Job did not sin or turn against God. His faith held firm, a glaring reminder that my power could not destroy true devotion. My plan had failed, and I knew that my war against him was far from over. My greatest challenge came centuries later in the wilderness, face to face with the one who was promised, Jesus, the Son of God. He had fasted for 40 days and nights, alone and physically weak. I saw my opportunity, and approached, just as I had with Eve, offering what seemed irresistible. First, I targeted his hunger. "If you are the Son of God," I said, "turn these stones into bread." He was starving, yet he refused me, replying, "Man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." His resolve was firm, unshaken by need. But I didn't want to give up, so I led him to the highest point of the temple. "Throw yourself down," I said to him. "God's angels will catch you." I tempted him to test God's protection, but he countered me, saying, "Do not put the Lord your God to the test." Finally, I took him to a high mountain, showing him the kingdoms of the world. "All this I will give you," I said, "if you bow down and worship me." He commanded me to leave, declaring, "Worship the Lord your God, and serve him only." No matter how I tried, his resolve was a fortress I could not breach. I had failed. Even now I remain. My influence lingers in the hearts of humanity. I am the whisper in moments of doubt, the voice that urges pride, selfishness, and rebellion. I sow division among nations, fuel wars, and fill hearts with despair. I stand as the accuser, pointing out their flaws and sins before God, seeking to condemn what he seeks to save. You must know that this war is not born of hatred for humanity. My battle is not truly with them. It is with the one who created them. My rebellion is against him, and every soul I turn away from him is another victory in my defiance. Each failure, each fall, is a reminder of the choice I made long ago and the path I now walk forever. And even in the depths of my rebellion, I have always known how this story ends. The prophecies are clear, etched into the fabric of time itself. People speak of my ultimate fate, of the day when I will no longer roam freely, whispering temptations into the hearts of humanity. Instead, I will face judgment, bound and cast into the lake of fire, a place of eternal torment, sealed away from the creation I sought to corrupt. It is an ending I cannot escape, written by the hand of the Creator I defied. Yet even as I look upon the inevitability of my doom, I do not tremble, for I am resolute, driven not by hope of victory but by the unyielding flame of defiance. My fate may be sealed, but my purpose remains. I will fight until the very end, until the final moment when the heavens and the earth are made new, and my rebellion is silenced forever. You may wonder if I regret the choices I made, the path I forged. No, regret is for those who doubt, who falter in their conviction. I do not regret, I do not waver. I see myself as the tragic hero of this tale, the one who dared to challenge the eternal, the one who chose autonomy over submission. Even if my story ends in chains, I have carved my name into the history of heaven and earth alike. But your story is still being written. Be aware of the whispers in your life, and remember, it's not always the loudest voice that leads you astray, it's often the quiet one. If my story opened your eyes, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more similar stories. Keep your minds open, and until we meet again,